Hello, and welcome to another roundup of a dozen dukes to add to your TBR. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot. You're watching Random Olive Reads. Portrait of the Duke by Alexa Aston is book one of the Suddenly a Duke series. We start with an adorable prologue with an outspoken teenager warning away one of her spoiled sister's suitors and letting him know that he isn't a real contender since he's just a Viscount. Despite the age gap and both of their youths, there's definitely a spark of chemistry between them. 10 years later, Lady Margaret is finally ready to make her debut after caring for her ill mother, mourning her death, then mourning her father's death. However, Margaret has no intention of getting married, and she wants to build a business painting portraits. Our young Viscount Daniel is now a duke, looking to get married this season. He had looked for Margaret in the previous years, but she was nowhere to be found. As he sees her in the present, there's an existing connection between both of their grandmothers who used to be friends when they were younger. So Daniel's grandmother is basically the best wing woman around, making sure that Margaret is close by and supporting her art. This was a relatively low angst book with an instant attraction between our main characters. If I Only Had a Duke by Lenora Bell is book two of the Disgraceful Dukes series. Thea, otherwise known as Lady Dorothea Beaumont, was left at the altar when the groom picked her sister instead. She wants to escape the London scene and retreat to her aunt's house in Ireland, except she's awkward and kind of accidentally becomes popular after she was asked to dance by Dalton. Dalton, who's the Duke of Osborne, is actually a secret vigilante looking for the man who killed his brother. His cover story is that he's a shameless rake. Thea blames Dalton for her sudden popularity and insists that he fix it by taking her with him on his journey to Ireland. The escapade that outwardly looks like it will compromise Thea will actually compromise her in truth. Overall, we have a socially awkward heroine not looking to get married and a secret crime fighting hero dealing with a lifetime of guilt. Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore is book one of the League of Extraordinary Women. This one is your classic social class difference type of romance with a woman who is unequal in station to a duke. Even worse, she's a university student campaigning for women's rights, and our duke is a staunch defender of the stuffy old laws. While she's trying to sway his politics, he's both trying to resist her and make her his mistress, and she's not interested in a mistress like arrangement at all. A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall is a standalone romance. We have a presumed dead best friend romance here with a trans woman who left her previous name and title away after being declared dead in the war. She's now living as a lady's companion to her sister in law and visiting her previous best friend, who has been grief stricken since he believes that his friend had died. They reconnect with a new understanding of each other and their identities, but still have to deal with the societal expectations of him being a duke. This was a very sweet story about finding joy and love with the person you've been connected with your whole life. And Viola's family is the best, most supportive family ever. The Duke Buys a Bride by Sophie Jordan is book three of the Rogue File series. Marcus has run away from his ducal responsibilities after he catches his best friend with his stepmother in a compromising position, and he's on his way to his estate in the north of Scotland. On the way there, he happens across a village wife auction, and then he buys slash saves the girl who's being so crudely sold off. Alice has been married in name only to her late father's friend since the age of 15 and provided care for the man's children and household. Her childhood friend was supposed to bid on her during the auction so they could start their new lives together, but that man disappeared and never showed up. So, although she's purchased by Marcus, she has no idea who he is or if he's trustworthy, and he declares that they won't really be married and he's going to employ her as a housekeeper. We end up embarking on a road trip romance here, traveling on horseback and stopping at various inns along the way. The Duke's Daring Bride by Caroline Lee is book four of the Surprise Duke series. Alistair is a reclusive duke who does not speak but makes his case in the House of Lords through letters and support documents. At night, he stalks the streets, fighting crime as the Dark Knight. One night, he saves Olivia from ruin while she's out there looking for a newspaper story. One of her investors just happens to be Alistair, and she shows up at his house the next day to ask him to reinstate his financial support, not knowing that he was the one who saved her the night before. He decides to propose to her in exchange for the newspaper support, mostly because he needs a wife and he doesn't want to go out into society to find one. So they start a marriage of convenience but have an instant attraction to each other. Would I Lie to the Duke by Eva Lee is book two of the Union of the Rake series. Noel meets an interesting woman who has a head for business, doesn't fuss at him for his title, and is entirely attractive. However, Jess is merely a farmer's daughter hoping to find investors for her family's soap making business. When she tries to sneak her way into a business exposition, she is nearly halted at the door and ends up pretending to be widowed to a baronet to gain entrance. While there, she tries to focus on finding ways to subtly promote her soap business and avoid the attentions of the Duke, but can't help being drawn to him. When You Wish Upon a Duke by Terrace Michaels is book two of the Awakened by a Kiss series. We have a Tinkerbell ish retelling here where Isabel is a travel agent who wants to run her own shop, and Jason shows up to ask for her help navigating to Iceland to rescue his cousin from pirates. She's resistant at first, but he offers her enough money to buy her own shop. And by the way, she's a little wary of returning to Iceland because of bad memories there. We have a lot of fun tie ins with Peter Pan and his gang here, as this kind of hints at a Peter Pan type of character. My Darling Duke by Stacey Reed is book one of the Sinful Wallflower series. Our poor wallflower kitty is so desperate that she starts a rumor that she's engaged to a reclusive duke, hoping that it will help her younger sisters get good marriage matches. She figures she'll just break the engagement after her sisters are married and go about her wallflower spinster way. Except things don't go exactly as planned. All of a sudden, she's being given monetary credit at the stores, and all of the Duke's staff are treating her like she's really his fiance. And then when he hears about it in the newspaper, he finally shows up to London just to see what this audacious girl is all about. There's clearly a reason why the Duke is a recluse in the first place. He was terribly injured in a fire, leaving him scarred with impaired mobility, and he has a lot of underlying insecurity that these two have to work through. Undressing the Duke by Erica Ridley is book seven of the Lords in Love series. Donovan is pressured by his mother to fulfill his ducal duties to marry a young lady and sire an heir. He has no interest in doing so and only has eyes for his valet of 20 years, Geoffrey. Knowing that he would not want to be lusting after his valet when he has a wife, he dismisses Geoffrey as his valet. Except they have to go to the Merrywell matchmaking festival so that Donovan can select a bride. While in Merrywell, they decide to act as friends instead of master and servant and find themselves finally giving in to the attraction between them all these years. This one is a quick read with a nice resolution, especially since Donovan has a younger brother who is besotted with his wife and has a bunch of kids to take on the role of heir. Heartless Duke by Scarlett Scott is book two of the League of Dukes series. Leo is the head of a special league of agents tasked with fighting some Irish crime organization. When he gets to his half brother's house for a wedding, he finds himself intrigued by his nephew's governess. Bridget is actually there pretending to be a governess so that she can kidnap the young Duke in exchange for her own brother's freedom. A standoff in the woods leads to Leo shooting her and taking her prisoner. Now, a lot of this book has Leo and Bridget at odds with each other since they're sworn enemies, but they're also fiercely attracted to each other and sometimes try to use that attraction to manipulate the other person. The manipulation doesn't work very well since they both lose their heads when they surrender to their lust. The Heiress Gets a Duke by Harper St. George is book one of the Gilded Age Heiresses series. We have a semi-tragic prologue starting the series with Camille, an American heiress, being married off to a much older and impoverished duke in England against her wishes. August is one of Camille's best friends who sees how awful the whole situation is and is thankful that her own parents would never do such a thing to her or her sister. Fast forward to a few months when August visits England with her parents and her younger sister, and her parents are doing exactly what she feared. They attempt to set up a match between younger sister Violet and impoverished Duke Evan, but August intends to thwart it. Doesn't much matter since Evan prefers the feisty August instead and tries to convince her to marry him. He needs the money because his father's antiquated ideals have left the estate in a lot of debt, and the tenants on his lands are suffering. August refuses because she would rather stay working for her father's company and has no interest in becoming a duchess. There's a lot of convincing involved here, even though these two are very clearly attracted to each other. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found a book or two to add to your TBR. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe to get updates, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.